Hey guys, this is Jason, and today I am reviewing Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves, directed by John Francis Daley and Jonathan M. Goldstein. It stars Chris Pine, Michelle Rodriguez, Sophie Lillis, Justice Smith, and Hugh Grant. And it is about a thief, played by Pine, who gathers up a team of unlikely adventurers and start their journey to find a long-lost relic. But then their journey goes awry when they run afoul to the wrong people. I'm gonna be honest, I was not looking forward to this movie at all. I didn't get excited for it when it was coming out in theaters because, one, the trailers didn't impress me. They made it look like it was going to be a generic sci-fi fantasy movie with a big cast. And two, I've never played the game before growing up. I really don't know how that works. All I know is that it is a board game that a lot of people have played over the years, and I got a little bit of that from Stranger Things whenever the four main kids would ever play the game themselves. And in case if you're wondering how I feel about the 2000s Dungeons & Dragons, I honestly don't remember a whole lot about that film, like really nothing about that film. I watched it once when I was very little, and that was a long time ago. All I remember is that it stars Jeremy Irons and Marlon Wayans, and that's it. And from the looks of it, it looks like it didn't do well when it came out. Like, it has a 9% on Rotten Tomatoes. And I know there are other Dungeons and Dragons films out there, mostly made for TV movies, but I'm only mentioning the ones that were released in theaters, the one from the 2000s and this one. And I gotta say, this is a pretty entertaining movie. I had a lot of fun watching it, and I'm glad I did, because this movie is made by the two guys that did the 2018 comedy Game Night, starring Jason Bateman and Rachel McAdams, which is a very funny movie. And another thing about Game Night is that it has a very cool way of using its cinematography, and if you've seen the movie, then you know what I'm talking about. What I liked about this film is the humor. I mean, yeah, there were a couple of moments that fell flat, but most of the humor really landed for me. In particular, there's this one scene where they're bringing back a few soldiers from the dead just to get answers about a certain object that they have to find. There's also a CGI moment in the beginning of the third act that I did not expect to see, and it was one of the weirdest and funniest things I've ever seen CGI do in a movie like this. Most of the acting is pretty good. Everyone does a strong job. I mean, granted, Chris Pine's character is basically more like a washed up or drunk version of his James T. Kirk from the J.J. Abrams Star Trek films, so he's basically playing the same character that he's known for playing as. Now, I wouldn't say that that's a bad thing. I actually think it really works for this movie and for the humor that they were going for, and Pine also has some surprisingly touching moments, especially with his partner, played by Michelle Rodriguez. And the rest of the acting is pretty good, despite the fact that most of these actors are basically playing as themselves. They still make up for it by having pretty fun performances, and they all have really good chemistry with one another. And for me, the best character in this film has to be Doran, played by Sophie Lillis, who is also in It Chapter 1. She is a shapeshifter that can change into different kinds of animals, like a fly or a mouse or an owl bear. And there's this one scene with her where she's trying to escape this castle after learning what a certain object is and where it's hiding, and it's all filmed to look like it's all in one shot while she's changing into different animals while trying to escape. Granted, I'm pretty sure that maybe there were some editing tricks to get us to think that was all in one take, but it was still a pretty cool chase scene with her changing into different animals. Now let's talk about the stuff that I really liked about this film, and those are the practical effects, the sets, and the animatronics. Like, they actually use a lot of real stuff in this movie, like actual animal heads with mouths that move when they talk. They actually use that in this movie. Granted, there are still some CGI stuff that would appear on screen, like a big CGI dragon, but for the most part, this movie uses some real animatronics, like a big bird and a big fish on the dock, and it's really good when it appears on screen. Another thing I want to praise about this film is the action sequences. They are fun and sometimes intense, Like, there's this one scene where our main characters are trapped in this labyrinth-like game, and they have to survive through a bunch of death traps and mythical creatures that are trapped inside with them. Now, even though I still have a fun time watching it, and I do recommend watching this film, but it does have some issues that I do want to bring up, and one of them is that it does unfortunately have some of those cliches in the story that I already saw coming a mile away. Like, they don't ruin the experience, but they were just something I already predicted after a certain character arc was happening, and I was already picking the pieces together of where they're gonna turn out. But the reason I'm still gonna give it a pass is because of the execution of all of that. Thanks to the acting and the characters throughout the film, it made me care about what was going on and made me forgive this film for those cliches. And my last issue with this film is unfortunately one of the main villains of the film. I'm not gonna spoil much about this character, but all I'll say is this villain is just some wizard that wants to take over the world and torture everyone, and that's about it. There's nothing else about this villain whatsoever. I would have liked if this movie at least developed this villain a little bit more so that I would feel more of that urgency and terror from this character. Dungeons and Dragons is surprisingly a fun and entertaining sci-fi fantasy movie. I mean, yes, it has some cliches and the villain is very bland, but it has really good humor that mostly landed for me. Good acting from everyone, really good chemistry from all of the characters throughout the film, awesome production design, sets, and animatronics, and really fun action sequences. If you're a fan of the Dungeons and Dragons game and hated the 2000s film, then you might enjoy this one more. And if you're not a fan of the Dungeons and Dragons game and never played the game at all, like me, you might still enjoy this film as well, like I did. I even recommend this to non-fans of the Dungeons and Dragons game. I'm gonna give Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves a B+. So guys, if you have seen Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves, either in theaters or on Paramount Plus recently, which is where I watched the film, what did you think about it? Did you love it more than me? Or did you think it disgraces the Dungeons & Dragons game and thought it was maybe even worse than the 2000s film? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, if you like this review, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss a thing. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.